What's up, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Mettle, the show where we take you behind the scenes of this motorsport industry that we all love so much. In this episode, we are going to chat to Franco Scribante, owner of Franco Scribante Race. Franco Scribante, welcome to Behind the Mettle. How are you doing?
Very good, and you, Jason?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Super excited. Hill climbers, but it's less than 2 weeks away. I don't think we realize how close this day actually is.
A little bit more than 2 weeks, but yes, close, and we are feeling the pressure already. We were actually at the track today, trying to iron out some gremlins, but these GTRs are so complicated that I'm yet to leave for a hill climb saying, well, that was nice, that was fast, and off we go.
Look, before we actually go into that, for some of the people that might not be aware, look, you are very familiar to people that are really into racing. Stalwarts that have been following racing for a long time will know exactly who you are. They know exactly what cars you race. But just to have a brief history, if we're talking about hill climb, you and I know each other since about, I think, 2014 when you were out in the B19.
Yes, that's correct.
I've seen every car that you've owned up that hill up and until today. It's been an amazing array of cars. But prior to that, you've been racing for a long time. You've raced every type of car on every type of track in every type of series. Where did your racing career actually start?
I started probably when I was about 14 or 15 years old in karting. I went straight to 125 GPs, they used to call them in those days. It's a rotary valve engine. And that's where I started, and I spent a couple of years there with some success. And then I went on to the 250 supercars, and I spent about 3 years there. And then I think from there I went to polos, and I spent 3 or 4 years in polos. That was a real breeding ground. That made you tough, really. I mean, if you could carry on and get through polos, you could, in my opinion, just about race anything. And from there, I gave up for quite a few years. I just sort of concentrated on work and really thought that I was finished with motor racing. And I got sort of invited or pestered, if you want to call it, because I wasn't really interested in those days. I'd sort of lost the vibe to get into a sports car and race in, I suppose, it was that day's version of extreme supercars today, which was called, let's have a look across the thing. I think I saw a trophy there somewhere. It was backed by Altec, so it was called the Altec Supercar Series. And I was in and out of that, and then I got involved in historics, and I drove a couple of times with and for Tony Martin in whatever he was building at the time. And different historics, all different sorts of things. And where we've ended up today is the Porsche in the supercars. A couple of historics that we tinker with and race if events are good. A few historics that we're still building. But generally speaking, today it's the Porsche in the supercars and the GTR in the hill climbs.
I think that's what a lot of people nowadays, and when I'm saying now, a lot of people nowadays is talking about not youngsters specifically, but sort of the Gen Xers and millennials, the guys that are watching YouTube, watching social media and that kind of thing, because obviously motorsport has just got a lot more cameras and eyes on it now. So a lot more people become familiar with, oh, that's the guy that drives the Porsche. Oh, he drives the Lamborghini. Oh, he drives this. So there's a lot of more people have got access to it now. And a lot of people obviously know you with the Porsche and the GTR. Now, the Porsche, because you've been racing that in extreme supercars for a good couple of years, and the GTR, which only ever sees itself at Simola Hillclimb. So what I want to touch, when you started, I want to say you started racing Simola Hillclimb 2014. Have I got that about right, when you were down there in the Chevrons B19?
That was our first success, let's call it. 3 or 4 years prior, I went with a Ferrari, and I gave it a go, but it wasn't the car for it. I think we just made it into the top 10. If we did, I can't even remember. We were number 10. And then I left it for a while. And then started becoming more watching the stuff overseas, and I actually wanted to go and do Parks Peak. That's what that's what sparked the whole GTA story. And as we went on and it became more and more onerous and harder to do, I sort of gave that idea up. And Simola just became bigger and better, and we've stayed here. And I mean, I see that this year there's more events that have already been. They say it's a done deal. So the Hillclimb thing's becoming a story.
So since I've been sort of following, right, from day one when I shot that one video, and I want to say around about 2014-ish, there hasn't been a year that's gone by. There might have been one where you haven't found yourself on one of the steps of the podium. More often than not, you're on the top step of the podium, more especially with Classic Car Fridays. So if I can just show you something, let me just go through something here quickly. So the cars that you race, the cars that from what after the Ferrari, the cars that I'm familiar with are the Chevron B19 and then the Chevron B26, which in the earlier days you drove for King of the Hill. And I've actually got a picture of that here. Where is this? Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring this onto the stage. There we go. So that is the Chevron B19. This is Eddie's baby. Eddie's in love with this car. Right? So this is the B19, right?
That's right.
And look, what is I know it's a classic car. It's an older car. You've owned it for a good couple of years, but give us a brief history on this car.
Look, this car, you know, how I became obviously sort of intrigued and developed a love for Chevrons was my relationship with my very long time friendship with Tony Martin. He had a relationship with the Chevron factory in the early days, and especially with the co-owner Paul Owens. And then sort of, you know, I became a friend with Paul. Paul's an old man today, but I mean, we're still in contact. And when I bought this car, I bought the car off a chap in Cape Town. Was it Fanika? I can't remember exactly. He was racing quite a few classics at the time, but the car before that had belonged to Peter Lindenberg, and there was some discrepancy or argument to say whether it was a genuine Gunston car or not. And for me, that was quite important. So after Paul had confirmed and certified the car as being a genuine Gunston car, I then decided to send it to him to have it rebuilt. So I sent it over to the factory, and they gave it a complete rebuild. And you know, they gave me their reasonings why it was a genuine Gunston car, and markings that they'd put on the car, and certain spares and toolings that had been used that were sponsored only for the Gunston cars. Yeah, so that's how it started, and I got the car back and then started to compete with it because the car was very ropey when I got it.
Yeah.
And he built it into concourse condition for me, and we did a lot of racing, a lot of sort of historic racing. And then we decided, I don't know why we decided, we thought it was the weapon of choice for the Hillclimb. You know, in those days, besides the historic day, the GTRs were dominating everything, but we could see that they were just raw horsepower, and not a lot had gone into the thought about chassis handling and that sort of stuff. So in 2014, we campaigned the car, and in those days there was no rule to say that you couldn't campaign it on the Friday and on the weekend. So we ended up winning the Friday, and then there was a lot of gossip and talk as to could this car actually win the whole thing. That was a very exciting time because there was really a David and Goliath story.
Yes.
And we got to the final. It was in the end. It was between myself and Des Goodsart, and we just managed to beat Des, and it was quite a miracle story.
And back then, Des was in his Nissan GTR, the R32, the Godzilla, is the one he was driving at the time, if I remember correctly. So, look, so that is one of the cars from, if I want to call it, the early days, right? And if we go back onto the slide over here, we've got the B26. So 1 or 2 years later, or not too long after, the B26 is what you started using for the King of the Hill. Is that right?
Yes. What happened after we won in the B19? That obviously never thought that something like that could happen.
Yeah.
They brought out a rule to say you couldn't use the same car on the Friday as on the weekend. So,
Oh, was that the rule? Okay.
yeah, because it wasn't great for viewership if the same guy wins everything or the same
Of
car.
course.
And I suppose
Kind
I
of like
also
everyone at the moment.
don't want to see a go-kart beating a Mirage. You know what I mean? But so what we did, we needed another weapon of choice for the weekend, for the Saturday and Sunday. And at that stage, we were starting to get quite involved in endurance racing. So we thought to ourselves, let's build one car that can do everything. And that's what we did. I sent Cobus over to Chevron, and he with Paul built the car together. Paul actually gave the car chassis number 9. He's still got the logbook, so he can do what he wants.
Yeah.
Because there were 8 B26s built in period.
Okay.
But we gave it all the mod cons. I mean, you know, the engine specs and all of that. I mean,
of course.
So we won the King of the Hill in that car.
Yes.
But very soon after that, I mean, Simola was the thing, and the guys were coming with such machinery. I mean, then Andre arrived with the Formula One Gould, and obviously with them, there was just no competition. There still isn't anything against that car. And it was at about that time where there was only one King of the Hill. Winner takes it all.
Yes.
They brought out 3 or 4 King of the Hills in the various classes, which is probably more fair because, I mean, the cars are very, very different. Yeah.
Well, that's actually something I want to touch on now. So after you had introduced the B26, right, then there was a time before the GTR came on the scene. Let me see what this next slide is. We've got this. This is what you're currently driving. This is the General in its early days. I think this was, whatever got you, 997, 20. This is 2018, where you took this car up the hill. And I think this is the year that you actually got this car. I think this was the only one year that you actually brought it out. You never ever raced that up the hill again. Have I got that right?
You got that right, Jason. You see, at that time, we had just bought that car, and that's the car we use today. I mean, there's several editions later now.
So many.
The car's evolved a lot over the last few years, and we were talking about the hill climbs and GTRs and what else or what, but we hadn't made up our minds, or maybe we had, but we didn't have the car yet, or we hadn't built it yet. And we had that car, and we thought we'd give it a go, but it just didn't work. You know, at Simola, I mean, half of it's in the start. So, you know, you either need something extremely light, like I do believe Charles Jabert's car will be very competitive this year. And I say that because
in the Lotus.
I saw it at the track today, and wow, I was extremely as fast as I've ever seen that car. So
really, okay,
I think he's going to be one to watch, and that's a possibility because it's 2-wheel drive, but it's so powerful and it's so light.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to have 4-wheel drive, you're going to have something like that.
Yes.
But otherwise, it's got to be 4-wheel drive because, I mean, that first drag to the first corner is for free. And whatever you lose, it's done. It's dusted. You're not going to get it back.
Of course. Because after the first corner, now it's uphill. So now you need horsepower to get you up the hill.
Correct.
So after 2018, right? So where are we here? So we're done about 2018-ish now. And then we go here. Boom. That is the GTR R35. But before we actually talk about this car, in 2009, Sarel van der Merwe won the Hillclimb. Those are in the early days. You've got the 2014 Classic Conqueror title in the B19, and then you've got 2014 King of the Hill in the B19. We just spoke about that. 2016, you're on that podium again for both the B19 and the B26. 2017 again in the B19, and this is under a side note in the Delada. That's what the first year he brought out the Delada, and this is when GTRs started making their way onto the scene properly. Then you've got 2018 Classic Conqueror again, just jump a little bit forward. 2019, you've got Classic Conqueror. And in 2019, the picture we just showed, that was the first year you brought out the GTR as we know it now, the one you're currently driving. And then 2020, there was a break, and you had 2021 Classic Conqueror. And this is when things started getting, what's the word? Not complicated, but it was just before this time when they started saying, okay, like you mentioned earlier, we can't just have a King of the Hill. We're going to have King of the Hill in different classes, right? So yes, you will have a fastest of the day, but you start going into your classes. So the GTR found itself in a class, and you're sitting in a class at the moment with folks like Richard Roots, Peter Zili that's in there, and a couple of other gentlemen that you mentioned. So if I can just do this quickly, over here, that's what the car looked like in 2019. So it's been the same car for a while, but it looks a bit different. This is what the car, last hill climb, this is what the car looked like in 2023, where you won the modified saloon cars section. And close on your heels in 2023 by just under a second was Richard Roots, who's also in a GTR. And I've got the results in front of me. We're not going to worry about going through those. Before we jump on to anything more about the car, that particular GTR, I've got so many stories because I spent so much time with the team in Neisner, in the garage at Nissan Neisner until 3 o'clock in the morning, watching them fly in gearboxes. It's crazy the amount of stories that we've got. What is it like driving that car up the hill at Simola Hillclimb?
Sure. Yeah, it's like I say, GTR always reminds me of a mirage. Whenever I used to see Des Goodsart line up on the line with that noise, and that banging and that popping, and that it was all very exciting. They're just so powerful. And we've got quite an aero package. And it takes a lot to commit to that aero package because it's against your nature to fly into a corner that you think you're not going to come out of the other side. So it takes a bit of work to get that discipline sorted out and to become used to it. But to say what is it like? It's awesome. I mean, it's awesome and it's actually very scary at the same time.
That was going to be my next question. It's got to be scary because for exactly the reason that you said now, it goes against your nature to think that, okay, for this car to be at its optimum performance, for it to grip more, I need to go faster. That is just a complete flip of what you think. But I can just I don't have to imagine because I've been there. Corbus is in your ear, watching the telemetry, and he's saying, you can do that corner faster. That car will stick. You've got to put a foot around that corner. And is that sort of what it's like? You're working in conjunction with the team, and they're sort of saying, listen, boss, this car will do this. The car will stick. Or you saying to them, guys, I think I can give it more. What's that conversation like?
Yeah, look, the next time that Koba says to me, you went through that corner fast enough, I think it'll be the first time in my life. So I'm used to that, I'm always too slow. So, but I mean, it's a two-way street, and, I take everything that they say seriously.
Yeah.
And usually when I do go faster is after we've sat down and pointed out where I can go faster. And, you just got to somehow go faster, even though you think you can't.
Yeah, and you sort of just put your faith in the team and put your faith in the guys. And this is what I love about the Franco Scribante racing team. I've been fortunate enough to be behind the scenes for a very, very long time. And I've always said it, and I'll never not say it. It's the most amazing race team that I've ever been around and ever worked with. I mean, the chemistry that you guys have, the team that you've built up. And it works because it's the same guys that have been around for the past 10, 12, 15 years. That mix works. So you put that whole package works really well. So I'm looking forward to see what that GTR does up the hill at Hillclimb. But before we close off, I just wanted to find out something quickly. That GTR, very few people and race car drivers are okay with talking about the horsepower on their cars. What are the chances you're going to give us a number? Because I've heard all the stories. People have been saying, "Oh, that GTR's got 2,000 horsepower." You know, um, I know Corbus won't tell me. He won't. That's why I'm asking you.
And I'll be quite honest with you, Jason. I don't actually know the exact number.
Okay.
We've never had it on a dyno that can handle that horsepower. So the numbers are
True.
theoretical, you know.
Yeah.
And the first 2 or 3 years, we never took that car to full boost because there were so many gremlins inside there that we just couldn't get it there. Or the
And the
fuel pumps
gearbox of
couldn't keep
yours.
up, or this, or that,
Yeah.
or it was always another story. We
Yeah.
do have the ability to run that at full boost at the moment.
Really?
So, you
Okay.
know, I suppose when we crank it up to max, it's a bit grey, but maybe 1.5, maybe
Okay.
1,600.
Okay.
You know,
We'll take one and a half.
people bandy horsepower figures around like it's nothing. A
Yeah.
1,000 horsepower is a lot of horsepower.
It's a lot.
Um,
It's a massive
so
amount.
no, I don't think 2,000. I think somewhere in between. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, before I thought I was going to close off now, but there's just something I wanted to get back to. Do you remember? And I can't for the life of me remember the year. I want to say it was 2020. No, it might have been 2019, the year just before COVID, because that was the one year where there wasn't any racing, where we were all in Asda, and then the gearbox decided to give up on the Friday, and you had to fly one in. Was that
Yes.
2019?
That was 2019. That was the first year.
Yeah,
Where, if you remember, because I mean you were with us the whole time in those days.
yeah,
We still spent 2 or 3 days in PE trying to get it right.
yes.
And I left PE basically having given up. I mean, I said, well, this is never going to happen. I mean,
And the team was like, "No, boss, we're going to make this work."
yeah, I mean, that was quite a miracle. And, you know, the car was, who was the car built by? What's the New Zealand's crowd name that built? You know the name.
Dobson.
Dodson. I
Yeah,
mean, with respect, and I know a lot of leadership has changed there, but they gave us a car that was, yeah. And
I
then I
mean
think when
when you
they saw the potential that we actually had and the movement that was growing around this car, then they really put their backs into it.
yeah
So, I
when
mean,
they
all
saw the
those
amount of
gearboxes that were being flown in and at a later stage, people and everything
yeah,
was all from them on the house. We didn't actually
yes.
pay for any of that, yeah.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because that was one of my wildest motorsport weekends ever. I remember being, and shooting with the team and being around the team all the time. You feel that energy. I mean, I can never be one of those guys. Those are the guys. I mean, all the guys on the team are the one putting in the hard work and the hours, and they were doing it for weeks and months prior. And with it getting harder and harder, closer it came to Hillclimb, just to have a gearbox give up a few days before. I remember being in Knysna Friday night after Classic Conqueror, the B19 had just done, and the GTR was on a lift at Knysna Nissan with the gearbox out. And the
Yes.
guys were just waiting for a gearbox, which somebody had driven to George to go pick up the gearbox, which was flown in the day or the night before or something.
Yeah, it
They
was
only got
incredible how it actually got to us through customs and everything, like in 24 hours. I mean, I thought it was a pipe dream, but it actually did happen, yeah.
It worked. I couldn't believe it. It was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We're sitting in the garage. I'm obviously just taking a few pictures, guys, still at the garage, doing this, doing that. And then I eventually said to the guys, "Course, but I'm sorry, I can't, guys. I still got editing to do. I'll see you guys in the morning." I went to the hotel. I woke up at about 6 a.m. I probably had about 2.5, 3 hours sleep. I woke up at 6 a.m. when the doors opened. The guys had just walked in after installing the gearbox. They were so wrecked. It was crazy. Then
Yeah.
the gearbox lasted, and the Saturday night, we still had Sunday to do. Saturday night, we
Yes.
went for dinner at the waterfront. Eugene, we were sitting around the dinner table, a long dinner table. Everybody was getting something. Eugene was at the dinner table talking, and then suddenly he was just doing this. Sleeping, sitting up straight. It was
Yeah.
the wildest weekend ever. And your words at the very end were before the last run. I might be stuffing it up, but you said something along the lines of, "Listen, but I'm giving it everything. We're either ending up across the finish line with the winning time, or I'm ending up off the mountain. One of the two. And you were just
something along those lines, and it's
well,
it's been told back to me.
Yeah.
Sort of that it was an arrogant way of saying things, which it certainly wasn't, and I didn't mean it that way. I just meant that with all the hard work that's been put in,
it was arrogant at all. It's just
we're going 11/10 here.
Yeah, you're putting. I mean, you most of all. I mean, you take so much weight on your own shoulders because you know the work that the team puts in, and you really want to win for yourself, yes, but you want to win for the guys behind the scenes, the guys that put in a lot of the work and things. You want this for them. So I know you harden yourself if it doesn't go that way. So I completely get it, and it's not arrogant in the least. I mean, I understand why. But look, Hillclimb's in just over 2 weeks. Are we doing Classic Concrete in the B19 and then the GTR for Hillclimb?
Yeah, it's the same plan as always. We blew the engine up in the B19 last year, so
I remember. Yes,
we sent it to the main oaks overseas, and then they made a lot of problems and they wouldn't answer the phones after that as usual. Wow. So, like everything else, I said to Corbus, well, this is just another thing and another lesson learned, that we will do absolutely everything that we do ourselves, and then we know it's right and we know it's as fast as it can be. So Corbus is finishing off that engine like today, tomorrow. And,
for the B19?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we had it finished, we had it in, and we had one or two glitches there, so it's been out again and it's back in. And I would presume before the end of next week, we will have had that car at the track, run it in, tested. There's a few options that we want to test of what we may or may not do on the hill on the Friday. Okay. The Friday in that car is a tall order now, because as lethal as it was in historics, there's some serious machinery there now. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We've almost got a taller order there than in the GTR, but that might be exaggerating a bit. But it's going to be tough competition on the Friday.
Is there anyone that concerns you up the hill this year in your class?
You talking about on the Friday?
No, for King of the Hill, in the super modified class. Is there anyone that concerns you?
Well, of course, Rekhot. I mean, Rekhot's he's a proper driver. We half caught him out last year. I mean, he had the pace all weekend. Mm-hmm. Whatever I did, he went quicker, and then we'd think that we were there, and he'd go quicker. Yeah. And then I think in that very final run, we shocked him a bit, because it was wet, but it wasn't so wet, and who knew how wet it was, and the times had been set. And then we went out and put in a time that was quite was actually very good for how the track was. And I think he wasn't expecting a time that quick. Yeah. And I think that rattled him a bit. Not that Rekhot gets easily rattled. He's not one of those types. But he had just drilled us the whole weekend, and he wasn't expecting that. And I think that caught him a little bit off guard. I'm sure that won't happen again, because he'll be wise to that. Actually, the exact same thing happened to me 2 years prior with Peter Zeely. Didn't expect to be out sitting on the line. What happened? Half thinking about what I was supposed to and not supposed to do. Those were the days when I had the gearbox glitches and I wasn't supposed to use fifth gear. I went up in fifth gear. I stuck into fifth gear thinking, who am I actually up against here? At that stage, it wasn't supposed to be Zeely. As quick as he was, and hats off to him because he won the event. In all that thinking and not keeping my mind on the game, I put it into fifth gear, then knew straight away, how am I going to get this thing out of fifth gear? And we lost it because of that slip in concentration. And that's what it is, It's that slip in concentration.
And with those gearbox glitches, it's coming back to me now. You couldn't, once you hit fifth, you couldn't change back down. It wouldn't select down again.
You had to wait very long. I mean, to maybe as much as a second that was wasted before you could actually get it into gear, before it would accept it. And it was, that 1 second feels like a year. Watching it tick down before it'll accept the gear. Yeah, but I mean,
haven't
all of those things should be sorted out. But that said, I mean, without a doubt, I mean, Regardt at the moment is the man who I regard with high esteem. But like I said, I was at the track today. I've seen in the past what any of the Hubert brothers can do.
Yeah.
Those guys can really pull a rabbit out their hat at times. And when I saw Charles at the track today, I was extremely impressed. So I don't think this is a two-horse race.
Okay. And then talking about the track, I'm not going to say much about it, but your GTR, is there a color and a livery change coming?
No, there's one or two little things towards the front of the car. A couple of little changes we made, and maybe the paints are slightly different. But it's 95% as you saw it before.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big story to change the whole color scheme and the team. And we leave it for every couple of years when you need a nice change. And you also got to come up with something that's really special that grabs you at that time. Yeah.
I do like the current color on the car. It's absolutely gorgeous. The way it matches the Porsche. I mean, people look at the car and they know it's you. It's such a unique color, and there's no other car that has got a color even similar to it. Like most cars have got a variation of white or white pearl, or they've got a blue. The color of your car is just so different; it's unmistakable. They just know that is a Scribante racing car.
Yeah, I don't even recall how we came up with that color. I don't know what idea we had, but it does work, and everybody loves it.
Yeah, it works very well. But look, Franco, thank you so much for spending some time with us and giving us some behind the scenes of the car, the team, and Legendary Hillclimb. And we are really looking forward to seeing you in about 2 weeks' time.
No, we excited, and we want to see everybody that we see on the hill, and we'll be seeing you shortly as well, Jason.
100%. Franco, thanks so much, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.